And good evening, everyone, and welcome to a fantastically satisfying edition of the Wrap Show this evening. I'm Phoenix, and joining me is Macca and Nikki. How are we going, guys?
Oh, very happy, very pleased with proceedings today.
Very happy, but thawing out slowly.
Yeah, it's been a bit like that, hasn't it? I didn't go to the game, thankfully, but I've been out and about today, and it's been disgusting weather, hasn't it?
It was freezing at the ground.
Well, yeah, brave me, Nikki. I piped it and I watched it from the comfort of the lounge.
Yeah,
they had 45,000 there, which was amazing considering that weather. I think there were some people who'd taken young families. They'd braved probably maybe a little bit into the second quarter, and then went nah, and took them home.
Was it right?
Let's quickly go through the stats, because we've got a little bit to go through tonight with the Showdown, of course. Friday night we had Geelong versus Sydney at Simmons, and Sydney gave them another touching up down there, 107-61. It was a bit of an insipid performance by the Cats, and losing Selwood along the way. They're in a bit of strife now.
They are, but it also showed no danger, no Geelong, and now they're going to be without Joel Selwood, who's their other only hope. So they could really slide down the ladder a little bit.
I mean, Sydney really do play down there so well because the SCG is a narrow ground. It's not as narrow as Cardinia Park, but they've got the game style that suits it, and they match up quite well against them. So I'd tip Sydney. I didn't tip them by that much, but I tipped them.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah, that makes three of us, actually. I tipped them on Thursday night. GWS hitting a little bit of form on Saturday, although it was at Monica, so you can take that with a little bit of a pinch of salt. 97-62 over the Demons. The Demons may be just hitting the wall. It's been a good season, but a long season for them.
Yeah, I think you've got something there, though. They're not quite up to the level of the top, say, three teams or three or four teams either. So, but I think Goody's done a good job with them, but there'll be no threat in the finals.
Yeah, they got their best midfielders back, but they didn't quite know how to cope with them actually being back. And the same with Gawn. Since they've figured out how to play without him and having to relearn how to play with him, it seems to be a struggle for them.
Yeah, I do agree with that, actually. Just probably lacking a little bit of class, I think, the D's towards the pointy end of the season, but still not a bad year from Goody's first year. The Bombers getting up in a pretty tight one over Carlton. The Bombers 84, Carlton 76 at the G. Hanging in there, Essendon, for a top 8 finish.
Yeah, but I'm hoping that we bring our A-grade game again when we go across there next week, because if we do, I think they'll struggle to stay in the 8 because there's so many contenders around them.
We had, I really thought Brisbane were going to get up over the Doggies, but the Doggies ended up winning the game that they should have won, 103-89 up there at the Gabba. So they slip into the 8 now.
Yeah. Brisbane's made some really nice strides this year.
Well, I must admit, I said at the beginning of the year they were crap, and they were. And they were. But what I will say about their coach, he has introduced young lads into this side, and I think they had 6 of them in there. They were all draftees at the last draft, and a credit to him because it's reinvigorated their side, and they're starting to look like they have a future, whereas in the first, say, 5 or 6 games of the year, they didn't look like it at all, and they were playing the same old. So, well done to their coach.
Yeah, I think you're right, Macca. I think it'd be a pass for Fagan in his first year, and they seem to have a couple of good young players coming through. They probably need a little bit more down back, but they're certainly pushing through. Fremantle predictably in a pretty boring game over Gold Coast, 90-67. The less said about that one, the better. Collingwood giving North an absolute thumping, 111-57. Collingwood finishing off the season well, although North, I think, have fallen in a bit of a hole. The Saints putting a real dent in West Coast finals chances. The Saints 103 to West Coast 95. Still can't win in Victoria, West Coast.
No, there's not much point in being in the finals because they won't win one. I'm hoping that they have a run of losses so that when we play them in the last game of the year, they don't really care.
It'll be a farewell game for a few players, though.
You're right, Nicky. I just hope that. They do play a lot better over there than they do away from there, but they won't have any home finals or anything like that. So if they did make it into the 8, they'd only be there to make up the numbers.
Yeah, I think so. They need a bit of a rebuild, I think, and Simpson's under a little bit of pressure, I think, up there. Richmond, pretty convincing win over Hawthorn, actually, 93-64 in average conditions at the G. So they are firming as a top 4 rival now.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that because when we played them, I think we played them over here, we gave them a real right kicking up the arse. But since then, they're gradually starting to look like a genuine side, and it'd be interesting to see what happens the next time we play them, if we do play them.
They've had a bit of a soft run as well, though. And interestingly, they match up so well against Hawthorn. I think somebody actually pointed out that when they were really, really crap, they were still smacking Hawthorn around when Hawthorn was the height of their powers. So there's just something about the way they match up against them just seems to work.
They have won a lot of games, Nicky.
They have. They haven't been that convincing about them. I think they've got some decent players around them, but I don't think they'll go far.
Well, the interesting thing is that they're relying on a very, very small forward line at the moment,
yes.
and I think that will find them out in finals.
All right, so that leaves us with a ladder of the top 8, Adelaide, GWS, Richmond and Geelong in the 4. Geelong starting to get under a little bit of pressure with a tough run home too. Port, Sydney, Western Bulldogs on 44. Port can still miss the 8 and they don't deserve to be in it at the moment.
Geez,
Nope.
I hope they miss.
I was listening to Hinkley and his presser, and he was just like, we just got smashed. It was a wake-up call. We got smashed. We'll be better than that. This time, apparently, what was one of them? One of his quotes was, this time of the year, your depth shows. Honey, you've got 2 players injured. What depth?
I haven't got any depth.
Outside of the 8 on 40 points, we've got West Coast, Melbourne and St Kilda. St Kilda making a little bit of a late push, although their percentage is shit. West Coast finding ways not to make the 8, and Melbourne, as we said earlier, just struggling a little bit. Then we've got Collingwood, Hawthorn, Fremantle, probably out of the race, and Gold Coast, North, Carlton and Brisbane. Probably a race in 10, maybe 11 now.
Yeah, I think it's actually when we talk about genuine flag chances, I think we're down to a race in 3 now, which is ourselves, Sydney and GWS. But if you're talking about the final 8, yep, about 11.
Well, I wouldn't thought it was a battle of 10 for the flag, Macca.
Okay.
Is he having a senior moment?
Oh, who knows? We've been carrying him a bit lately, I think. Macca, what do you reckon, Nicky?
Bullshit.
Hope you put explicit on the cast. Macca did it this time.
Yeah, but you should always put explicit when I'm on.
True.
All right, so let's go through some head-to-head stats while I madly click on this stupid laptop that's so slow. And what an absolute domination the Adelaide Port game was. I mean, seriously, I haven't seen a domination of a team in that first quarter. Even though it was only 1-9 to 1-1 in the first quarter, we absolutely belted them on the way to winning 18 goals 22, 130 to 7 goals 446. That first quarter was ridiculous.
Yeah, it was as one-sided as you would see. The ball just lived in our forward line. The reason they got a goal in that first quarter was because of the fact that there was nobody in that particular half, and that was the Westhoff goal I was thinking of there. I'm not sure whether they got another one or not, but I think it was only the one. But, the ball just lived in our forward line.
We just controlled that play so well. and that space and how our defenders were setting up, because Port is extremely predictable in how they have their forward entries. They only go for that pocket. So we knew we didn't really actually have to man up the corridor because they weren't going to use it that often, but we would set up, they would drop a player loose into there and we would set up about 5 metres off of them. So in that kind of wet weather, if they tried to get a kick to him, we had time to close that player down. But otherwise, it gave us an extra defender manning up the wing and that corridor along that space where they wanted to go. It was just ridiculous.
Well, I thought their setups were ridiculous, actually, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Let's go through some head-to-heads, eh? We outdisposed them by an even 100, 407 to 307. We had 250 kicks, 157 handballs to their 164, 143. Just an absolute domination. 90 marks to 48, 83 tackles to 81. Sauce just got done in the hitouts, 44 to 49. Freeze, we got a little bit of a ride, I thought, from the umpires, but probably because we were at it a bit harder. What else did we have? 40 scoring shots to 11. Our conversion rate was shit for a change, but we're still our disposals per scoring shot, 10 disposals per scoring shot. We were scoring every 10th disposal, whereas they were every 28th disposal. 55 to 35 clearances, 60 to 75 clangers, only 24 to 48 rebound 50s. That's because I only spent about 20% of the game in their forward 50. 81 to 31 inside 50s. Unbelievable. 81 to 31 inside 50s. We had 181 to 135 contested possessions, 233 to 167 uncontested possessions, 289 to 204 effective disposals, going at 71% disposal efficiency in that disastrous weather. We only had 60 clangers to 75, 19 contested marks to 6, 17 marks inside 50 to 3, 55 clearances to 35. Metres gained 6,282 to 4,667. We beat them in centre clearances 18 to 8, stoppage clearances 37 to 27, score involvements 122 to 50, intercepts 85-71. The reason why I'm ripping through these is simply because I want to highlight what an absolute obliteration it was. Tackles inside 50, 25 to 7. Over to you guys.
Well, the interesting thing about the obliteration is the fact that generally when you play a team, they have one good quarter where they show something. But when you look at our scoring shots, we had 40 scoring shots and we had 10 in each quarter. It was 1-9 in the first quarter. It was something like 3-7 or something, or 4-6, whatever it was in the second. And so it was just consistent all the way through the games, and they never really gave a yelp. That's the thing that would. If I was a Port supporter, I really would feel like cutting my throat because they didn't even give a yelp all game.
It was kind of funny. At one stage, they flashed up on the screen at the ground that they had 8 inside 50s and we'd had 34. And I looked at the score. They'd scored 8 points. We'd scored 36. It was just amazing to see that that's how potent we were. And just on the goal kicking, that wind was atrocious. It was changing direction all the time. It was, yeah. So a lot of miskicking, etc. And if people want to try and pick on the inaccuracy, that we should actually have smashed them by even more.
Oh, that's true, Nikki. I mean, I probably at least half of our points should have been goals. Just gimme goals virtually, and some of the ones that got missed were ridiculously easy, and by guys that you wouldn't expect to do that.
I think the first thing to point out is that we didn't have one player apart from DMAC who went off early with a corky under 10 possessions for the game. Mitch McGovern was our least with 10. We didn't have one under 10 apart from DMAC. So that's 20 players on the ground essentially that had double-figure possessions.
Yeah, and that's a very good point you raised because I was saying to Nicky before the game, I can't think of a passenger that we had. Atkins probably didn't play as well as you'd perhaps really like him to because he started very slowly, but I thought he got better as the game went on. But it was a very much the old statement of a real team effort.
Yeah, let's go through some individuals. Matty Crouch, 13 and 21 for 34 touches. I thought he was just about our best again. 2 marks, 8 tackles, 3 goal assists, 2 inside 50s, 8 clearances. Went at 79.4%. His disposal efficiency is going really well lately. 15 contested possessions, 1 contested mark. Oh, that's a new stat. What's that? CCL. Centre clearances. Okay.
Yeah,
Four centre clearances, 4 stoppage clearances, 12 score involvements, 260 metres. Oh, I'm loving all this new stuff from the AFL. Pretty solid game from Matt again.
Yeah, no, top game. And he was one of about 6 players who you'd argue could be very close to our best player.
It was interesting that he got a lot of, because we've noticed him being a bit more outside. Greenwood loves to pass to him, but also when Matt gets it, it's either he's going to give it to Brad or he gives it to Tex.
He does, actually. That's a very good point, Nicky.
But there were some beautiful passes.
He's really turning into our Sam Mitchell, I reckon, Matt Crouch. He's directing play, he's cool and calm with ball in hand, he makes good decisions now more often than not, and he's really building into a very solid midfielder, and it's great to see. The other thing that was great to see, Rory Sloane, I was saying to Scorpus on Thursday night, I didn't think they had anyone to go with Sloaney. They chucked Boak on him for quite a while, and I think they ran Ebert with him for a little while.
Yes.
So he had 30 touches, 21 kicks, 9 handballs, 5 marks, kicked to goal, 7 tackles, 10 inside 50s, 9 clearances. Sorry, that's a cat in the background. What else do we have here? 17 contested possessions, went at 70% disposal efficiency, 5 1%ers, 5 centre clearances, 10 score involvements, and 472 metres gained. A really tough, solid, and he also spent 92% time on ground, Rory Slow.
At one stage, he was our full forward for quite a long period of time. So, and this was in the third quarter. Halfway through the third quarter, I think Pikey just went, okay, let's practice some stuff. Because we changed our setups. Yeah,
it's interesting, isn't it? The 2 guys that Port tried to at least run with him, if not try to stop him, were powerless to do it. It was you could see he was loving it playing again today because he wasn't getting his. He did have a couple of frees given to him early for a hold, and then after that they seemed to stop holding him, and he was loving it.
It was ridiculous that they were doing those holds because if you'd paid attention throughout the rest of the games over this weekend, they were calling holds so much. That was the focus for the week.
Correct, Nicky.
And it was like, this is going to be great for Sloane because that's what they do to him.
And it was good to see him play as he can play.
Tommy Lynch had 19 kicks, 10 handballs for 29 touches, 4 marks, kicked a goal. So he won the... Sloaney won the Game of Crows this week. 1 goal, 2, had 1 tackle, 7 inside 50s, 3 clearances for Tommy Lynch. 14 contested possessions. His disposal efficiency was pretty terrible though, 48.3. But he had 1 mark inside 50, had 1 centre clearance and 2... stoppage clearances, 9 score involvements, and 478 metres gained. Just an indicator of how much of a link man he is. And they didn't really have too many answers for Tommy running up and down that wing.
His work rate is fantastic, isn't it? There was one there where he cleared the ball from half back up to the centre wing, and the guy at centre wing waited just for a few seconds. Next minute, when he kicks it to the next man down the line, it's the man who's kicked it to him in the first place, Tommy Lynch, and that's what Tommy. He gives us an outlet. He's a real link man, and to get him for a second round draft from St Kilda as we did, but we stole him.
He was epic. He was busting his gut, as we know. And it was a lot harder in that type of weather to do it. But he was just, even into the last, and it was a training run, he was still working so hard.
Bradley Crouch, 15 kicks, 14 handballs for 29 posies, 5 marks, 8 tackles, 5 inside 50s, 9 clearances, 14 contested possessions, winner 86.2% DE. He had 4 centre clearances and 5 stoppage clearances, 8 score involvements, and was just a really good return for Brad. Nice to see him back in the team and doing well, really stepping up his game coming into finals.
Yeah, we've been saying now for about the last 3 or 4 weeks, maybe 5 weeks, he's been building his game. It just gets better every week, and I thought he was very, very close to our best player today, and I had him certainly in our best 3 players, and some of his stuff was really strong and outstanding, and he's starting to look like the player we thought he was going to be.
Oh, just some of the bursts of speed he was doing. And the fact, he's got a plate in his cheekbone. He went, I don't need to wear headgear, which says so much about him.
Yeah, fearless, and not easy coming back with that sort of an injury in that sort of a game where it is so tough in the clinches, but did really well. Rory Laird, 18 and 10 for 28, 8 marks, 2 tackles, 7 inside 50s, only the 4 contested possessions, but that's not what he's really all about. 75% disposal efficiency, 4 score involvements, and a team high 543 metres. Second to Brodie Smith, 543 metres gain. 6 intercepts as well for Lairdy. Just controlled things as a bit of a quarterback across the half-back line there.
Well, Port Adelaide did state before the game that they were going to camp on both Laird and Brodie Smith so that they couldn't play their normal type of game clearing the ball as they do. Well, I'd say if that was their object, it was an abject failure.
Well, they brought in the specialist Angus Monfries to blanket Brodie Smith, and I would have forgiven Brodie Smith for actually laughing at Monfries by the end of the game, because what an abject failure of a selection Angus Monfries was. And why would you bring a guy like him in nearly 2 years out of footy to go on someone as quick and damaging as Brodie Smith? It just defies logic.
It was probably one of the most insane selections I've seen in many, many years of football, because he was never going to be able to do the job. You knew that, I knew that, everybody else knew that, apparently apart from the Port selectors, and he just failed miserably.
There was that in the last quarter where they kicked the ball across field and Monfries was free, but it went over his head and it just kind of kept rolling, and eventually it does roll out and Smith was chasing him. And all I could see was like, yep, Monfries, there is AFL football passing you by.
Yeah. Look, the guy hasn't played for 2 years, and he hasn't been setting the world alight at SAFL level, and an amazing selection, amazing.
Look, I thought I agreed with the Showdown medal. I thought Sauce was our best player.
So influential.
10 kicks, 2 handballs for 12 disposals, 3 marks, 2 goals, 1 should have been 3, Sauce, come on. 6 tackles, 42 hit-outs. He actually did beat Ryder. Ryder had 40 hit-outs. 2 inside 50s, 3 clearances. He also, let me have a look, 8 contested possessions, 2 contested marks, 3 1%ers, 9 score involvements, just an out-and-out ruckman's game in that kind of conditions was fantastic.
Yeah, well, you can't. The interesting thing is, Port Adelaide have been trying to talk Ryder up as the ruckman of the year, and when I think he's had a very good year, no doubt about that. I think Jacobs has had every bit as good a year, if not better, and there's no doubt Jacobs, I thought he lowered Ryder's colours today.
Oh, he was all over him. He was playing him around the ground. There was only, I think, about twice I saw Ryder get away from him in terms of a lead. And Ryder was so conscious of him. I mean, he was hanging on and scragging for dear life from the start. And Source got a couple of frees against him and some blocking, which he hasn't been getting in the past when it's been done to him. And that, I think, just kind of lifted him. But, he got us our first goal, and then he got us the one after halftime, which just really just went, nah, sorry, we're still here to play. You're not going to have a sniff in this second half. He was just so influential. I picked him for the Showdown medalist at halftime.
I got an observation about Paddy Ryder, and I don't mean to be derogatory to an opposition player because, you want to be gracious winners, but I didn't think that Paddy Ryder played with any heart whatsoever tonight.
He looked, well, when Source got that first goal, he looked defeated at that stage, I thought. I think you're right. He looked like he was not enjoying the game at all, and as the game went on, I just thought that, not his best game, even though I have no doubt he tried, but I don't know whether his heart was really in it.
I don't think he likes wet weather.
No, I was going to say that, Nikki. I've seen this before from Ryder when it's wet. I think you're absolutely right. He hates those conditions.
Okay, that could well be right, because that would fit with how he looked.
Thought Tex had a really influential game, 14 and 9 for 23, took 8 marks, kicked 3 goals too, laid the 4 tackles inside 50, had 4 inside 50s himself. Just a really solid performance, 16 contested possessions, 5 contested marks, 4 of those were inside 50, and I just felt he also had 11 score involvements, and I just thought it was a real captain's game, also 4 tackles inside 50.
Using the cricketing language, a real captain's knock. I thought he was, I had him in probably our best 3 as well, because my best 3 were in Crouch, Jacobs and Tex, because I thought they were the most influential players on the ground, and I thought Tex was really influential with that forward line.
He was once again up against a shorter backline, which he knows he can bully and he can outbody, and as soon as he kind of sees that he's got that little bit of a mismatch, it's just game on for him. He's just like, right, I've got you, and I'm going to show you. And you can just see that in the way that he just goes about it. Now, is he going to be in trouble for the strike on Boak?
I don't think so.
No, I wouldn't have thought so. I'd be very, very surprised.
Will he get a fine, though? Which will be his second one.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's worthy of that, but we'll see.
Look, down back, I thought Brown, Lever in particular, and also Jake Kelly were excellent. Brown spent most of his time on Gray when Gray was up forward, although Robbie Gray went into the midfield when Ken realised he couldn't win without him. But he had 12 and 8 for 20 touches. Luke Brown, the 6 marks, and also the 4 inside 50s, and went at 90% with his disposals, and I just thought he was solid. Jake Lever had the 12 and 6, 8 marks, a couple of tackles, 6 inside 50s for Jake as well. And also the 9 contested possessions, and also the 9 1%ers. As we know, Jake always digs in on that one, and 12 intercepts as well for Lever. That's a game high for him. And Jake Kelly, 7 and 8 for 15. His stats weren't as high as the others, but didn't waste a kick or handball, 100% disposal efficiency, and I just felt those 3 lads across the half-back line were really solid.
Can't argue with anything you said there. I think you summed it up beautifully. They didn't let too many crumbs go past them.
It was just a case of our backline was so much better than their forward line. That back 6 working together, and they'll swap. Towards the end of the game, we actually had Lever on Dixon. He's like, right, okay, now you're on him. And particularly Kelly, there was that little ball that went over the back, and he took off after it. Now, we know he's a great endurance runner. He's not actually great at sprinting, but he was outpacing. He was actually running away from the Port player who was, had a chance to try and kick a goal. Now, whether that was something to do with their mentality of, oh, I'm not going to get this, but he was just like, no, I'm not going to let you.
What I like about Kelly, I reckon he's learned a lot from Lever this year because he's playing a lot like him lately.
They have. They actually play really well together. You'll notice they will pass to each other a lot, or one will come and help the other out. They just have this really, really great chemistry.
They have. Look, just on the Jake Lever, they've got to throw the bloody kitchen so he can keep that bloke. They must.
I don't know, Macca. There's a point. There's a dollar value where I think he's probably more value to us as trade value than in the team, but that dollar value I think sits at about $7.50 for mine.
I agree with Phoenix. If it's anything over that, go. You want to be a part of this team, you stay and be a part of this team. We will give you a fair value. If you want ridiculous money, go somewhere where you're not going to win a premiership.
Well, $7.50 is very, very good money, and for a guy of his age and experience, that would be excellent money. So I don't know what sort of money he's getting get offered elsewhere, but $7.50, that's I certainly wouldn't go over that, but I would think he should sign at that.
Well, don't forget that $7.50 in the new CBA.
Yeah, so you got to take 20% off of that. So that's probably about $600 in the old language.
Yeah, exactly. So, look, there's a long way to go. If he wants to be part of it, and I reckon he does want to be a part of it. I'm not sure how much truth there is to the rumours of him meeting with Melbourne during the week, but
that was no. He was sitting at the airport with a couple of the Melbourne players, and there were other Crows players around him as well, whilst both teams were waiting to leave. It wasn't anything secret. It was in the airport in Darwin.
Well, that's the way I heard it too, Nicky, exactly what you just said, and that's been embellished by the Victorian reporters who don't mention any of that at all, that he's just had these secret meetings with the Melbourne people.
And it wasn't secret because their officials were all hanging around.
It's ridiculous, isn't it? Anyway, let's push on. I thought Jakey had a great game anyway.
He did.
Another lad that had a really good game was Edward. 11 and 5 for 16, had the 6 marks, had the 4 goals, 4 if you don't mind, 4 tackles as well. He just turns it on. So that goal that Hartlett just touched with a fingernail, that would have been just about goal of the year, and the one that he kicked on the other side of the ground was just as good almost.
Yeah, but that one that Hartlett got just a finger on it, one little finger, but and actually Eddie did know that was touched, by the way. But that was a hell of a shot because he never even looked, and he's on the left foot under pressure and just puts it straight through. I mean, there wouldn't be too many footballers who could do that, and this guy's a freak, and I reckon he averages about 4 in these showdowns.
He does average 4 in the showdowns. So I actually contend he probably had point of the year. He had goal assist of the year when he had another go later on that ended up in JJ's arms because he completely missed it. And another goal of the year nomination. So he kind of got the 3 going on. And the funniest thing is that when he did that kick across, which ended up going across goal, which JJ marked, the section of the hill he was just in front of, they stood up and applauded him. And then he's just lying on the ground going, oh, okay.
He was really having a shot for goal, I reckon.
He was.
The good thing about Eddie as well, like he's kicked 4 goals, 4, but he's also had 13 score involvements. So the amount of impact that he has on our scoreboard is ridiculous. That's 8 scoring shots plus 13 score involvements. That's a huge night,
isn't it? And just on Josh Jenkins, mentioning his name, does anybody agree with it that they thought he was lazy in the first half?
No.
Look, I didn't think the conditions suited him terribly much. I think he's been a little bit off the boil in the last couple of weeks anyway, JJ. But he still kicked 4 goals, Macca.
And he showed some really nice physicality. A couple of our goals or some really nice scoring shots we had were direct results of him just really putting his body in and using his size. We saw him do that last week against Goldsack, and he continued on with it again this week.
But I thought the same last week against Collingwood, that he was pretty ordinary in the first half and came good in the second half. And I thought, no, I'm not saying he was hopeless in the first half, but I didn't think he was working quite as hard as he could have. And then in the second half, I thought he was really full ball.
I've always thought that JJ needs the ball going his way. He's not very good, Macca, when the contest isn't tilted in his favour. So you get times where he's caught behind the ball or caught behind the player, and he's a bit of a Mark Waugh. He never looks like he's trying.
That's a very, very apt description. I agree with that.
Yeah, when he actually is trying.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I mean, we could cover the rest. I thought Alex Keith did all right. Mitch McGovern was a little bit quiet, but not really conditions for him.
On that, I pulled somebody up on the board about it. His pressure, so we talked about Lynch and how much he was working. Gov was doing just as much, and his defensive pressure he was putting on in that forward line, he had another almost game, but the follow-up and the second and the third efforts he was doing, incredibly pleased with.
Yeah, that one player we haven't mentioned, but I would like to give him a mention, was Charlie Cameron. One of his best games for a long time, and admittedly it's much easier to do that in a side that's dominating, but he had 17 possessions, and it's been quite a few weeks since he's had that.
Yeah, it was a good game from Cameron. Just on Gov, I didn't mean he was quiet in terms of didn't do much. He just didn't have huge numbers, but it just makes it really difficult for opponents to match up when we've got Walker, Jenkins, McGovern in there, and they can't all have blinders, and they all work hard when they're not getting big numbers anyway, and I thought Gov did work hard today. So it was a good game. I thought our outside runners were good when required. I thought Knight and Atkins, whilst they didn't rack up big numbers, they were good when needed. And obviously Brodie Smith we talked about before. So what can you say? It was an absolute humbling by the Crows over Port, and Port have got to be wondering whether they deserve to be in the top 8 right now.
Well, on that performance, of course they don't. Whether that's just one of those weeks where we've done everything right and they've done everything wrong, and I'm not suggesting that we wouldn't have won anyhow, but we really did have one of those games where the complete team effort, and we've been through the players, and you can't point to any of our players and say they were rotten, but I could go to the Port side and I could point out of their 22 players, we look at Sam Powell-Pepper, they're pushing him to say he's the recruit of the year. Well, I'm sorry, Sam, you look very bloody ordinary amongst about 18 other guys. So it's just perhaps it's one of those games where they didn't really turn up mentally. You think they would for a showdown. I just don't understand that.
Look, I'm Powell-Pepper, right? You got to give the kid a break. He's had it like every other kid gets managed. He's played every game, and he's been expected to do lots of bullocking work for Port. I've seen him play really well, and if he's not rising star this year, he's amongst the top 3. But I reckon he's just he's a young kid, even though he's a bull, so he's burnt out. As for the rest of them, apart from Gray, probably Polek, Dixon when he was in the play, they just didn't try, Port.
Polek was chasing kicks in the back half because that was the only place he got it.
But he didn't
only
at least
had
get it,
one.
did
Yeah. Well, no, it's because he was that first little short kick out in the pocket. Then it was his job to do the long kick down the line where we just bashed it and basically brought the ball straight back in. He did manage to get, I think, one run up through the middle, which gave them, and he got a goal at the end of it. But that was pretty much all he did. At one stage, Trengrove was on the screen, and I went, "Is he playing?"
Oh, you've been very harsh. I had him in there, one of their better players.
They had one player.
Oh, they only had one very good player. There was only one. That was Robbie Gray. Actually, his efficiency was very poor too, though, Robbie Gray.
Yes, most of the time, him only getting the ball was Sloan actually handballing it directly to him.
But
No, that's not true. Gray got a lot of the ball, and he did burn it quite a bit. And he's a class player, and you like credit where it's due. But he had no mates whatsoever, and
he had nothing to keep.
They are in big trouble, Port. I don't think this is a win. This is a loss they can actually bounce back from. Whereas I think the win gives us some really good momentum going into a couple of tough weeks.
Well, I hope so. If we can carry that form on, well, we should win all the other games. Although Sydney will be a good game. Port, on that form, they wouldn't beat anybody, but I'm sure they can play a bit better than that.
It depends on if they're allowed to play better than that. We stopped their run. We stopped their bringing it clearly through the midfield. Once they got the ball in the back lines, they had to keep looking backwards to find somebody to kick it to or try and switch the play. And anytime they switched the play, everything was covered. They just could not get a free run at it. And it was basically on how we set up. We were physically at them from the start. We weren't going to take a back foot. They came out all rah-rah, push and shove, and then it just went, oh, they're actually in our face now. We don't like this.
Interesting, Nicky, is that Pikey did say in his press conference that we played slightly differently today, and there's no doubt about it. We do play a different game when it's wet, and it just seems perfectly suited to the wet.
It's also very much about, in the wet, it's you have to have good skills, which we know we do have. We've got some really highly skilled players. And it's structure. And it's really, really sticking to the structure. Now,
Correct.
That's something we talk about that is an issue in that Pike won't make changes because we try and stick to the structure when things aren't quite working. But it works when it's wet weather. And they've got some good, honest goers, but they've got some people who, like Pollock, he provides the run, but in terms of his kicking skills, he's not that good. And they've got a lot of players like that have flaws in skill area, and it shows up even more so in the wet.
Oh, look, he might have had a big day today, but in terms of that, but I regard him as one of the best kicks in their side, Nicky.
Which tells you something, Macca.
Oh, well, it does, because I reckon that's a real shit kick to their side. But I thought some of his disposal was pretty good today. I'm not suggesting it was all good, but I thought that, and I'm not a real Pollock fan, but I think in fairness to him, I thought he did try.
Look, I think what it came down to really is that we just got the ball more. We wanted the ball more, and we just didn't allow them first use. And the amount of time that the ball spent in our forward 50 in the first half, I think it was like 72% to 28 or something like that in the first half. I mean, they're just ridiculous numbers, and it all came down to us getting the ball first because it allowed us to get field position. And in weather and conditions like that, once you've got the ball up forward, it's very hard, obviously, to transition out. They just didn't want it, Port. That's as simple as that, and that's an indictment on their club.
Well, one interesting thing is how much the mental attitude plays such a huge role in the game of football. Then, if you look at our first half against Collingwood, and we look to be one of the most ordinary sides you've ever seen. Yet you would look at our first half again tonight against an opponent who should have been absolutely desperate, and we looked like we were a Rolls Royce by comparison. And you just wouldn't compare the first half of this game versus the first half of the Collingwood game. And it just shows what a mindset can do.
Look, I guess the question remains, and, without putting a dampener on things, but let's be realistic, they didn't play well. Have we seen the organic growth that we were promised at the beginning of the year now, with Huey playing well, with the Crouch boys playing well, with other blokes playing bit roles in there? Have we seen enough organic growth to play finals intensity football through the midfield?
Yeah, look, I think we have, undoubtedly. I was actually going to tell them on the lines I was going to raise that particular point, that when you look at the Crouch boys, now that Brad's got all those runs under his belt, Matt's taken the responsibility all year. Rory Sloane, if he's not sat on really tight. And, of course, the big one that's added something to there with Hugh Greenwood. I mean, apart from his clearances and going in hard for the ball, 13 tackles on top of that as part of his game. It just completes a pretty good midfield that's got skills, but it's tough as well. And Douglas as well, just contributing quite a bit, and other blokes just rolling through there for little bits. I think our midfield is turning into a very good midfield.
Yeah, for me, it's bringing Hugh in has been such an advantage for that midfield because it's allowed Matt and Brad to work more outside.
Correct.
But they still do some of their inside stuff as well. So if their turn to go, they go. If it's not, then they stay out. The way we're setting up now on the wings where we leave, so centre bounce, we have the 4 forwards, high half forwards in a way. They set up one side of the wing, and then defensive side of the wing is where our wingmen set up. So we're actually getting more around the ball, but at that outside space. So if the opposition gets it, their kick out is going to a player that's often covered, instead of going to a player that was free, which is what was happening last year and also happening at the start of this year a little bit to a degree. I think Douglas, we didn't talk about him in the wrap just before, but he did some really nice stuff throughout the game, particularly in the first half. Got a bit quiet in the second, but his first half was very good. With Rory, that's our only downside is when he's sat upon and he tries and he worries too much about it. When he gets in the mindset of I don't care, you're not going to stop me, which he did against Geelong. And he did today. He needs to do that more often. And if he can do that in finals, then they won't stop him.
Agreed. Can't argue with that, Nicky.
And I think that's what we've been asking from Rory all along is just to, as difficult as it is at times, just not worry about the tag, just straight line the contest. And use your attributes. When he starts worrying about the niggle and starts, returning fire on the niggle, he loses focus. But certainly not today, although I don't think that, Boak's a good player, but he's sadly out of touch, and I don't think he could go with Sloane, to be honest.
No. I don't know whether anybody had the misfortune of reading Chris McDermott's lineup of the players in the Sunday Mail today, I think it was. And the Taylor Walker versus Homps lineup he gave in favour of Homps. I mean, the guy is mental. Homps was dropped for lack of form. He comes back in, and Taylor Walker's been in good form, and he's got Homps is going to be the winner in that position. And I say, Chris McDermott, you know nothing about football, even though you played it very well.
No, and who saw him coach at North Adelaide knows he knows nothing about football. Okay, is Tex going to be included in the squad of 40 for the All-Australian team?
No, I wouldn't have thought so.
No.
I don't think so.
Which is ridiculous, because if they're actually picking a forward line, he's the number 1 goal assist player in the AFL. He's sitting where in the goals for the year, and he would have to be the captain of the year. He's quite likely to be named that again in the AFLPA. He should be in the All-Australian team if they're picking a proper forward line and not just going on, such and such kicked more goals.
Just can't see it. They class him as a power forward. They'll only pick 2, and he's not in the best 2, unfortunately. We can certainly kick along some All-Australian discussion on Tuesday night, though. That's an interesting topic. Looking ahead, we have the Bombers next week at Etihad Stadium. That's going to be an interesting game.
Without Merritt, probably, and definitely without Fantasia. Those are big losses to Essendon.
Yeah, Merritt would be a huge loss, but I saw the incident. Gee, it wasn't very much in it, Nick. I mean, he will get cited, I'm sure of that, but do you think he'll get a game for that?
Yeah, it's very similar to the Zorko one. in the way that he actually did it, and Zorko, that one got a week. So if the MRP is consistent, he's very likely to go.
Get off then.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah, I must admit, it was a love tap, really.
It was a swinging. He had a swinging arm, though. It was very much a striking action. It wasn't just that little jab. It was a swing.
Well, he gets a lot of shit thrown at him. I would say I'm probably a little bit sympathetic towards him, but it annoys me, though, that these ball players, that if they ever retaliate, they seem to get caught because they're not experts at doing it. But Brody, what's his name? The guy, the ruckman from Collingwood, he's definitely going to. Now, he has to get games. And look, to me, I think there's a very simple solution to this, because at the moment, the coaches have concentrated players tackling on pinning the arms so that they can't get free and can't dispose of the ball. But players, being what they are, also want to throw them to the ground. And if you throw a guy who's got his arms pinned, he's got no way of defending himself as he lands, and there's every chance he's going to land on his head. And that's
a good conversation for Tuesday Night Live. This is the rap show, Macca. We have to wrap this one up. There was no SANFL this week, was there?
Nope. Well, there was for other teams, but not for us.
Yeah. So, as I said, a couple of interesting games. We've got the Bombers. The Bulldogs are playing GWS. That'll be an interesting one. And Geelong playing Richmond. So, some real final 8 and top 4 shaping games next week.
Well, we've got to take the game seriously, because Essendon, and when they do get it right, they're very difficult to play, because they play a very reckless running type of game, in my opinion, and if it comes off, they can be difficult to stop. If you get on top of them, well, then that's a different story. And I think it's very important that we start well.
It's when they've been able to play that kind of game, they've come up against teams that aren't as strong defensively as what we are. And we accounted for them at the start of the year. When they were up and going, they were playing quite nicely at the start of the year. They came over here and we just dismantled them.
Yeah, but that's true. And we've got to do that again. And we should. I think we should win comfortably, but I can see a little bit of danger in the game if we take it lightly.
Yeah, a couple of niggles as well. Talia had some ice on a groin after the game. Obviously, D-Max got a heavy cork, so he might be in some doubt. Charlie Cameron got a knock to the hip. He struggled at times during the game, so could be I think he got an accidental elbow to the face. I'm not quite sure. Yeah. That wasn't intentional. So a couple down next week, you'd imagine, and whilst we want to try and get a top 2 spot going, we also need to manage the next couple of weeks with a couple of short breaks between games, ending in the Sydney game in a fortnight.
On a notoriously hard surface as well.
Sorry, what was that, Nikki?
Eddie had notoriously hard surface, so we've come off a very, very soft surface with how squelchy the ground was tonight, and then 6-day break to Eddie had with the harder surface.
It is. It's a hard, fast surface, and that's what it suits Essendon's style of game, but also suits us as well. Yeah.
So look, I think we'll probably finish it up there. I don't have any outro music this week. And if people listening knew what I actually had cobbled together to get this thing out this week, they'd excuse the fact that we don't have any outro music. But thanks everyone for joining us for the later time slot, obviously forced on us by the later game fixture time. I hate those 4:10 games, they're ridiculous. And we will see you all on Tuesday night for Tuesday Night Live. See you guys.
Yep, good night all.